千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together.
So let's talk about left and right. And I want to start by talking about the Western view of left and right. So in the West, by tradition and in our language, there has always been additional context, additional nuance about left and right. In fact, right, you know and I know, right has always had a more positive connotation. So left and right is not just the two hands that you have, the two sides of a thing. The English word right also means correct, good, proper, just. When you say, oh, that's right, you're saying, oh, that's correct. When you're talking about the right thing to do, you're talking about a correct, good, proper, or just thing to do. So the word right isn't just about one of your two hands, it's about that which is positive. Our language, our culture, our traditions are full of manifestations of this convention. For example, when you describe someone as your right hand, what do you mean? Well, you're talking about a reliable, valuable, useful helper or assistant. And sometimes people will say things like, he is my right-hand man. And that's exactly what they mean. So what about other social conventions? Notice that whenever you meet someone and you extend a hand for a handshake, it's always the right hand that you extend. No one extends the left hand, even those who are left-handed. How about in religion? Well, we know that in Christianity, it is taught that Jesus is seated to the right hand of God. So there is a long history of the right being good, proper, correct, etc. And it goes back much further than just English. Even in the days of Latin, the language, right side is dexter. Dexter is a Latin word meaning the right side. This in English has additional connotations. You can use the word dexterous to mean skillful, competent, quick, graceful. You can play a musical instrument with a great deal of dexterity, with a lot of skill. So again, dexter, very good context. What about the left? Would anyone happen to know the Latin for left? If dexter is Latin for the right side, then the left in Latin is also revealing. And I think a lot of people know this. a quick glance at the feedback shows that I'm right. I'm right. See what I did there? Left side is sinister. So, of course, in English, sinister means evil, disaster, ill fortune, or trouble. So there we have it. This is how it is in the West. So what about the ancient Chinese? And I specifically emphasize ancient Chinese because a lot of this ancient context over the centuries, a lot of this has been lost. But definitely back in the days of Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese context was alive and well, and that's what we're trying to understand. So here we go. Here's the slide on the ancient Chinese view of left and right. And I underscore ancient there because in modern times, a lot of this has been lost. So in that context, right never had a more positive connotation, unlike the way it is in English and in the West. But then it never had a more negative connotation either. So let's explore. Let's go deeper. So the Chinese word for right is you. It has no additional meaning or nuance, positive or negative. So you, the right hand, the right side, it doesn't mean good or proper or just. It just means the right side and that's it. And it doesn't mean the correct side, the right-handed side. Now, there is that, but then there's also the observation by the ancient Chinese. They noticed, just like most of the world, since historical times, since antiquity, most of the world has noticed that the vast majority of the people out there are right-handed. That's the way it is today as well. Estimates place the right-handed people from 75 to 95%. The truth may be somewhere in the middle. So 8 or 9 times out of 10, people are right-handed. Therefore, because most people are right-handed, the right hand is most often raised in anger. That is, most often used to strike someone, to hit someone, to cause damage, used for violence. So, of course, it's not just the ancient Chinese who noted that most people were right-handed. This was the case in the West as well. This is the reason why the raised right hand, palm forward, became universal gesture for, look at my hand, it's empty. I'm not carrying any weapons. I come to you in the spirit of peace. Now, we also, in the West, by convention, raise the right hand to swear. And it just means that I harbor no hidden agenda, like I carry no weapons. I'm opening up to you, and as greeting, it's basically a greeting of peace. So when we raise the hand, hello, and we shake the hand a little bit, wave the hand a little bit, hi. When we do that, it actually comes from long tradition of, I greet you in peace, look at my hand, I got no weapons. So probably the most far-reaching manifestation of this very human gesture is probably from back in the 70s. So this is back in the days when the US space program was still relatively active, was still doing things, sending out probes out into space. So in 1972, for the spacecraft Pioneer 10, and also 1973 for the sequel to that, for the successor Pioneer 11, scientists decided to affix an aluminum plaque to the spacecraft and then launch them into space. So that plaque has engraving that looks like this. And the male and female figures standing together provide possible extraterrestrial intelligent life an idea of human anatomy. The hand that is raised probably doesn't mean a whole lot to extraterrestrial intelligence, but it is for human beings, it's become a universal gesture of greeting and the offering of peace. I come in peace. So, as I said, right never had a more positive connotation. If anything, it could be said to be a little bit more negative, because noting that the right hand is most often used for striking other people, for causing damage, the right hand has come to represent violence. And thus, opening the right hand, showing there's no weapons, has been the offering of peace in the Western paradigm. But for the ancient Chinese, they looked at the left hand, and the reasoning process goes like this. If the right hand represented violence, then it must also be true that the left hand represented peace. This is why in the traditional Chinese greeting, you put your hands together, it's always the left hand covering the right. So last time, in the previous chapter, I used a couple of stills from a movie about Ye Wen, or Yip Man in Cantonese. And that movie still showed the traditional Chinese greeting. So notice Ye Wen, the martial arts master, is putting his hands together. His right hand is in the form of a fist. The left hand covers the right hand. So what does that mean? This conveys the message that you bring peace and its importance surpasses contention, symbolized by left hand covering the right, meaning peace prevails. Peace overcomes contention. Peace is greater than violence. So, of course, all of that is wrapped together in that gesture and is simply used for greeting. So, the ancient Chinese weren't the only ones. All over the world, people greet one another using variations of peace. So, for the Chinese traditional greeting, that today is still being used, but it's usually used in the context of like New Year celebration or a period martial arts movie, where you will see this quite a bit. So we can now sum up the difference between East and West. So with the Western view of left and right, I started out, I ended talking about how in the Latin language, we get clues about how left and right are seen today. The right hand is dexter in Latin. So dexterous in English means skillful, competent, quick, graceful. Whereas the left hand is sinister in Latin. And in English, sinister means evil, disaster, ill fortune, or trouble. So right away, the difference between the two is pretty stark. There seems to be nothing bad about the right hand and nothing good about the left hand. Then, on The word right, it also means correct, good, proper, just. So that when you talk about someone being your right hand, you're talking about a reliable, valuable, useful helper or assistant. So the expression, he's my right hand man. The right hand is what you extend when it comes time for a handshake. And finally, in religion, Jesus is seated at the right hand of God. So looking at this right now, you can tell the picture looks rather unbalanced. It looks like a lot of emphasis, a lot of goodness on the right, and next to nothing on the left. That's how it is in the West. So the Eastern perspective, the ancient Chinese perspective, fortunately, is a little bit more balanced than what you see here. Let's take a look. It also had the effect of summarizing everything. So first, the Mandarin character for right is you. And it just means that. It means that side, the side to the right. And there's no additional meaning in the Chinese language. It doesn't mean proper, it doesn't mean just, it doesn't mean correct. Left, 左. And again, no additional meaning. It doesn't mean good or bad or proper or improper, nothing. Now, with that as the basis, the ancient Chinese still noticed that most people are right-handed. For that reason, the right hand is most often used for violence, or the way that I said it was that the right hand is the hand that is most often raised in anger. Therefore, right hand represents violence, the yang aspect. The left hand represents peace, or the yin aspect. So let me say another quick thing about that. If you have a person who is perhaps a native Mandarin speaker who grows up in contemporary Chinese culture, that person may say 男左女右, which means male to the left, females to the right. Or more precisely, it means men, left hand, women, right hand. Well, that in Chinese culture is known as the later heaven, 后天. When we're talking about the Tao, 先天, earlier heaven, this is the scheme right here. Left hand associated with yin, peace, and right hand associated with yang, violence. So it's not a mistake that I'm presenting left and right exactly like this. This is how it was. This is the way that Lao Tzu saw the left and right. Okay, so let's now bring in left and right to the lines that we're studying. Now you can bet that the concept of left and right is infused throughout Chinese culture. And when you practice something like Qigong or Taiji, you find an emphasis that the motions, the movements that you do to one side, especially Qigong, very common, you have to do the same for the other side. You have to rotate X number of times to the right. You have to rotate the same number of times to the left. This is to help the body regain its balance. The human body appears to have external symmetry, but then we all know that the heart is situated off center. So the external symmetry is not the whole story. There's hidden aspects that are asymmetrical. Okay, let's dig into left and right further, and we'll be digging into left and right in the context of peace versus violence. Line 4, honorable gentlemen, while at home, value the left. Okay, well, now that you've seen the whole discussion on left and right, peace and violence, etc., you're going to find this line very easy to decipher. Value the left means value the peace. So now you can see valuing the left simply means valuing peace, and the whole line is talking about how honorable gentlemen, remember, it's honorable people, honorable ladies and gentlemen, I should say. Honorable people, honorable individuals regard having peace in the home as very important. Now, in the next line, it's going to be talking about how when deploying the military, value the right, which represents violence. So that makes perfect sense too. Before we get there though, let me point one thing out. This will be helpful to you as you explore Daodejing in general. So let me just say, without spending too much time on it, that there are Daodejing books out there that claim to be English translations, but when you flip open to 31, you see that it skips any mention of left and right. When that is the case, guys, it's not a translation. You have an author who decides to leave out an important part of 31. So what's been created? Not a translation, at least not a faithful translation. And the reason it may get skipped is because the author of that book may not feel the difference, may not be confident about knowing the difference between the left and right in accordance with the ancient Chinese culture that we're talking about here. There are also Daodejing books out there that when you flip open to 31, you will see explanations, you will see the translation that incorporates left and right, but then there is no explanation on that. I would say both are absolutely necessary to qualify a book as a legitimate, authentic book on the Daodejing, that number one, left and right have to be clearly translated. Number two, they have to be explained. So this gives you a simple way to assess the quality of a Daodejing book at the bookstore. Flip open to chapter 31, take a look at the translation. Do you see left and right? If you do, look for the explanation. Is the explanation present or absent? If there's no left or right, or if there's no explanation, that book is disqualified.
Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.